Hey everyone, welcome to the PCS-Proof Podcast, where we're covering the vital things you need to know to thrive in every season of military life. I'm your host and milspouse fitness expert, Grace Barnick-Damazo, and I encourage you to join me each week as we dive deep into topics like fitness, wellness, and entrepreneurship as a military spouse so that you can maintain your own sense of identity and purpose, conquering every transition with strength and resilience. As we journey together, you can expect uplifting conversations and insights. We'll share some laughs, and you can count on me to keep it real so that together we can become truly PCS-proof. Now let's get into it.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the PCS-Proof Podcast. Today we're diving into something that's so important for us military spouses and women in military life. As military spouses and women in military life, we face unique challenges that can make maintaining a health and fitness routine feel like a constant uphill battle. The frequent moves, the deployments, the unpredictable schedules, it's a lot. But amidst all this chaos, finding the right kind of motivation can be our lifeline. Imagine that you've just moved into your new duty station, the boxes are barely unpacked, and your partner is already gearing up for a TDY, an underway, or a deployment. The stress is overwhelming, and the last thing on your mind is hitting the gym. But then you remember the last time you skipped your workouts during a move. You felt sluggish, you felt like your mood was plummeting, and it took months to get back on track. That memory really sparks something inside of you, and you have this determination to do things differently this time. Or consider this scenario. It's 5 a.m., your alarm clock goes off, it's pitch dark outside, and every part of you wants to hit that snooze button and go back to sleep. But then you think about your kids and how you want to be a positive role model for them, showing them the importance of self-care and taking care of your health no matter the circumstances. And that thought gets you out of bed into your gym shoes. These real-life scenarios are where motivation comes into play. Motivation is that spark that ignites your drive to take action, especially when military life gets really tough. It's what helps us choose a workout over an extra hour of sleep or a healthier meal over another trip through the drive-thru. But motivation is really tricky. It can be both a great ally or another deterrent to our long-term fitness success. It's all in how we choose to use motivation that we're able to harness its true benefits. Today, we'll explore the best and the worst sources of motivation, and I'll share some practical advice on how to harness the right kind of motivation to keep you moving forward, no matter what military life throws at you. We'll delve into insights from Stanford professor Dr. B.J. Fogg's research into understanding how motivation can shape our health and fitness journey. So whether you've been really wanting to get started or you've been wanting to restart your fitness journey and you've just been waiting for that spark of motivation to hit you, or maybe you're struggling right now to maintain your momentum, this episode's for you. And if you have a friend who's been mentioning to you that they just can't get motivated to get to the gym, this is your opportunity to share this episode with them. And a few months from now, they'll very likely be thanking you for helping them get over this motivation hurdle and finally get unstuck. Before we get started, let me share a little truth with you. I am very rarely motivated to work out. I start my workouts with a pretty low energy level. And funnily enough, I think that the only times that I feel really motivated to work out are when I'm on vacation and the hotel has a nice gym, or when we move to a new duty station and there's a really nice fitness center on base. But for the majority of the time, I'm not exactly skipping to the gym to do my workouts, especially during times of high stress or when my routine gets disrupted. Motivation is at basically zero, but 95% of the time, I still make it happen. But it hasn't always been this way. There were definitely days in the past that I can remember hitting the snooze button or skipping my morning workout. There were even days when I would get out of bed and put on my gym clothes and even putting on my shoes, only to lose my motivation and not even leave the house. And I'm pretty sure there were even a few times that I would drive all the way to the gym and then change my mind and go back home. So I totally get it when I hear from women that they're struggling to stay motivated with their fitness. I get how discouraging and exhausting it can feel to try to push through on sheer willpower. And I understand how much it can chip away at your confidence when it feels like It's so easy for everyone else around us to stay motivated. Why am I struggling so much? It wasn't until I had a better understanding of what motivation is, and I found the right sources of motivation and how to get around low motivation, that things started to fall into place. I've learned the hard way of what works and what doesn't, and I'm excited to share these insights with you today so that you can stop putting all of your eggs in the motivation basket and start implementing the strategies that have been proven to work. We all know how tough it can be to keep up with a health and fitness routine amidst the constant moves, the deployments, and everything else that comes with military life. But don't worry, I've got some great tips and strategies that actually work. And I'm going to look at the best and the worst sources of motivation and share some practical advice to keep you moving no matter what military life throws your way. And we'll dive right in right after this. I'll be back in 60 seconds.
Hey, fellow milspouse. Ever felt the frustration of being forced to restart your fitness routine every time military life throws you a curveball? Whether it's a PCS, a deployment, or a short-term assignment, disruptions can make progress feel nearly impossible. But now there's a solution designed just for you. The PCS-Proof Fitness Program from FitPath Coaching. Designed by a woman in military life, for women in military life. It's flexible, adaptable, and affordable. No more setbacks or starting over, just steady progress on your terms. Visit fitpathcoaching.com/PCS-proof-fitness to start your journey today. And as a special offer for our podcast listeners, get your first month free with promo code POD4FREE. That's POD, the number 4, FREE. Say goodbye to stress and frustration and hello to a stronger, healthier, happier you with PCS-Proof Fitness. Join us today and get ready to conquer any challenge military life sends your way. PCS-Proof Fitness, join today.
So what exactly is motivation? At its core, motivation is what drives us to take action towards achieving a goal. It's what gets us off the couch and into our workout clothes, or helps us choose to go to the gym after a long day of work over heading home for a 6-hour Netflix marathon. From a professional perspective, there are two main types of motivation: intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation comes from within, so think intrinsic, internal. It's driven by personal satisfaction, enjoyment, or a sense of accomplishment. For example, running just because you love the way it makes you feel, or because you love the challenge of it. And number 2 is extrinsic motivation. So extrinsic, external. And this is driven by external factors like rewards or recognition or the avoidance of negative consequences. Think of working out to win a competition or to avoid feeling guilty about skipping the gym. Motivation is crucial for starting and maintaining a fitness routine, but it has its upsides and its downsides. Dr. B.J. Fogg is a renowned behavior scientist at Stanford University, and he has extensively studied motivation and behavior change. His work, particularly through his Fogg behavior model, we'll refer to it in this episode as the FBM, provides valuable insights on how motivation impacts health and fitness outcomes. So let's break down the upsides and the downsides of motivation based on his research. First, let's talk about the upsides of motivation, the good things about motivation. So our motivation will initiate behavior change. We know that. It's great for helping us get started. And according to the Fogg behavior model, motivation is one of 3 critical elements required for lasting behavior change. The other 2 factors are ability and prompts, and you can think of prompts as like a trigger. High levels of motivation can spark the initiation of new behaviors, such as starting a workout routine or adopting healthier eating habits. So when motivation is high, individuals are more likely to take the first steps toward positive health changes, overcoming that initial barrier or that initial activation energy that might otherwise prevent action. It also helps to enhance our effort and our persistence. So Fogg's research suggests that when individuals are motivated, they are more willing to put in the effort required to achieve their goals. This can lead to greater persistence especially during the early stages of the behavior change process when habits are not yet formed. High motivation helps individuals push through challenges and maintain their effort until the new behavior becomes more habitual and less dependent on higher motivation levels. And motivation also helps to facilitate habit formation, and this is key. In his tiny habits method, Fogg emphasizes that starting with small behaviors and celebrating each small win will eventually lead to habit creation. Motivation can provide that initial push needed to start these small behaviors, which, when repeated over time, lead to habit formation. So by leveraging motivation to establish these tiny, manageable habits, individuals can create sustainable changes that become automatic over time. And here are 3 of the best motivators, 3 of the best ways to utilize motivation towards your eventual long-term habits. Number 1 is intrinsic motivators, internal, intrinsic. By finding joy in the process of exercise or some sense of achievement from reaching personal fitness goals. So think of this as like celebrating the process as much as you want the result. So finding enjoyment in the process of the goal achievement, not just waiting for the goal. And this leads to long-term adherence. It increases the enjoyment of the physical activity. So a lot of people that I work with when we start working together say that they hate exercising. So we work a lot on finding ways to enjoy the process, enjoy the progress, or getting better at form. And this helps to deepen their personal commitment to their long-term health. The second best motivator is social support. And we talk about this so much in military life. Social support is so important. And I know it's one of the challenges of military life is finding that social support every single time we move. But finding things like joining a fitness group or having a workout buddy, whether you're in the same duty station or you're in a completely different continent, having that person to receive positive reinforcement and provide accountability, emotional support, a sense of belonging, those are also important, and it can make fitness activities more enjoyable and more sustainable. And number 3 is to set individualized personal health goals. So this is important because we can have a goal of wanting to lower our blood pressure, but if it's coming from an external source rather than from ourselves and having that personal meaning to us, it's going to work in a very different way. That motivation is going to be very, very different. So it's important for you to tie your goals to something that's very individualized to you. So whether it's wanting to lower your blood pressure or lose a certain amount of weight or improve your endurance within a period of time, it really helps to tie that to something that's really meaningful to you. So I want to aim to lower my blood pressure in order to, here's just an example that comes up to me, is so that I can make sure that I'm here and I'm living as long as I possibly can so I can support my family and make those memories and pass along good, healthy behaviors to my kids. And this helps when we're tracking progress, and it helps to maintain our focus and helps us to stay motivated because we have these clear objectives of the why and why it's important to me as an individual. Now let's talk about some of the downsides of motivation, how motivation can actually negatively impact our long-term fitness success. The first way that it can do this is that motivation is by nature very fickle and very fluctuating. Dr. Fogg acknowledges that motivation can be highly variable and unpredictable. It can be influenced by a number of factors, including our mood, our environment, and external stressors. And because motivation levels fluctuate drastically, relying solely on motivation to sustain behavior change can lead to inconsistency. And that's typically what we see is when motivation goes away, that's when we drop off our routine. So this is when individuals may struggle to maintain their health and fitness routines long term, and we have these periods of dropping off and having to restart, which is much more difficult every single time that we try and restart, right? And speaking of this overemphasis on motivation, the FBM highlights that behavior change is not just about high motivation. We talked about the other 2 factors, ability, which is the ease of performing the behavior, how easy is it for you to do the behavior, and the prompt or the trigger. These are equally important. So overemphasizing motivation can overshadow these other critical elements. Focusing too much on boosting motivation without addressing how to make it easier to do the behavior or ensuring that there's an effective trigger will likely lead to long-term failure. So for instance, if a workout routine is too complex or too time-consuming, even a highly motivated individual might not be able to stick with it. And then there's this short-term focus. Fogg's work shows that motivation is often more effective in short-term bursts of activity rather than sustained long-term behavior change. This is why he advocates for starting with tiny habits that require minimal motivation to perform consistently. Using motivation for short-term goals can result in burnout or loss of interest once the initial excitement wears off. And we see this every single year with New Year's resolutions, right? So without a strategy to transition from high motivation to building routine habits, long-term adherence can and will likely suffer. So now let's talk about the 3 worst motivators. And when I say worst, I'm really trying to say least effective motivators. The first is extrinsic reward, so extrinsic, external. So examples would be like exercising to win a cash prize or competition. And while these can be really effective short-term, relying on rewards like money or prizes often will lead to a quick drop in motivation once the reward is removed. So we can see how this would work really short-term, but it's not a long-term strategy. Number 2 is social comparison. Feeling pressured to match the fitness levels or appearance of social media influencers or your peers. Comparing yourself to others can lead to feelings of inadequacy, decreased self-esteem, and unsustainable habits driven by a desire to outdo others. And I feel like this is a really big one right now for we women in military life, this comparison trap within military life as well as with those outside of military life. Number 3 is negative reinforcement. So an example of this would be like exercising to avoid criticism or avoid punishment rather than for your own personal health benefits. And this creates a stressful and unpleasant association with fitness activity, which is, as a coach, the worst thing or the last thing that I would want for anyone. And this can lead to burnout and eventually avoidance. Again, the last thing that I want for you. And I actually know of trainers who have required their clients to write a blank check for a charity that they hate and they would never support in order to, quote unquote, motivate the participants to successfully complete a challenge or meet their fat loss goals. And again, this might work short term, but it will likely lead to a really negative association with exercise or cause them to participate or engage in not so healthy behaviors in order to meet the goal. And let's just quickly talk about guilt for a second. It's a common form of negative reinforcement, and it's something that many of us deal with, whether it's internally, externally, or both. When you exercise or do really anything out of guilt, you're driven by a desire to avoid negative feelings or criticism, self-criticism or otherwise. Research shows that guilt can be effective when you get started, but it will also increase stress and increase anxiety. It will reduce your intrinsic motivation, and it will foster an unhealthy pattern of behaviors. It'll lower your self-esteem and, again, can lead to avoidance behaviors towards exercise. Therefore, guilt-driven motivation is not sustainable and can create a negative cycle of fitness and health habits, typically leading to resentment towards exercise. And just knowing how beneficial exercise can be for improving our resilience in military life, that's the last thing that we want, is to create a scenario where we become resentful to our fitness routines, right? So we've gone through a lot. Let's quickly summarize the key points regarding motivation. First, we gain understanding of what motivation is, and we recognize the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how they each impact our fitness journey. And then we tapped into the findings of Dr. BJ Fogg and his Fogg behavior model to explain why motivation is a great tool in the beginning of our journeys and how to use his tiny habits method to start moving forward to the ultimate goal of habit creation. We identified the best sources or the most effective sources of motivation focusing on intrinsic enjoyment, seeking social support, and then setting clear personal health goals. And then we became aware of the pitfalls. We want to avoid relying on extrinsic rewards, social comparison, negative reinforcement, and guilting behaviors around our health and fitness routines. And before we go, I want to leave you with 5 action steps that you can start to take today to overcome the motivation hurdle and get moving forward towards your health and fitness goals without feeling like you're trying to run through a wall anymore. So the first action step is to find an activity that you love. Experiment with different exercises until you find one that you genuinely enjoy. Sports have been a great source of enjoyment for me, but look into some recreational sports in your area or fitness classes or something that's available on base or on post. Number 2 is to build that social network. Invite a friend to your local fitness class or join a local fitness group or find a workout buddy to keep you accountable and motivated from afar. Any of those will be great for building that support network that's going to help keep you truly motivated. Number 3 is to set SMART, S-M-A-R-T, intrinsic goals. So create specific goals that mean something to you. Make sure that they are measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals that keep you focused. So right now, I'm currently running a 100 workout challenge that is focused solely on consistency. We're challenging ourselves to complete 100 workouts between July 1st and December 31st. Completing an average of 4 workouts each week will ensure that we achieve our goal. So this is a great example of a goal that is specific, that's measurable, that's achievable, that's relevant, and it's time-bound. So this would be one example of a SMART intrinsic goal. So if you're interested in joining us, and this is not a sales pitch, the challenge is completely free, but if you are interested in joining, you absolutely still can. Just message me on social media at Grace B Fitness or through at PCS-Proof Podcast, and we can work together to get you on board with this SMART goal. Number 4 is to celebrate all the small wins. So acknowledge and reward yourself for any and all progress, no matter how small it seems. This has been proven to increase your long-term adherence and success. Number 5 is to stay flexible and stay patient. Understand that motivation will fluctuate and it's okay to have off days. Instead, focus on building the sustainable habits rather than waiting for motivation to come back around or to be there for you when you need it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the PCS-Proof Podcast. My big kitty Zuko just jumped up on my lap. You might be able to hear him purring in the background. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a quick comment and let me know what stuck out to you most. Were you pleasantly surprised by anything that you heard? I'd love to hear. And if you're thinking about that one friend or that one coworker who seems to be always battling with their motivation, here's a really easy way to get them the information that they need to start moving forward again. Just share this episode with them. They'll thank you for it later. I would be so grateful if you could just take a quick second to make sure that you're following this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform and leave us a 5-star review. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps the algorithm, especially on Apple Podcasts, to get this show out to our larger military spouse community. I've got so many great episodes for you in the pipeline. Episodes around goal setting, preparing for the summer to end and the kids to go back to school. So make sure that you're subscribed and follow us on our social media at PCS-Proof Podcast to get notified when each new episode is released. That's all for this week. Until next week, remember that no matter where in the world military life sends you, together we are PCS-Proof. Adios. Say bye, Zuko. Good boy.
And here is the legal language. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or fitpathcoaching.com. Moreover, we are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.